Welcome back to the Shuffle Squad. Zach Lesage here. Today we're going to be covering over the top 10 meta decks from Surging Sparks. Surging Sparks has just been released. It's available for play as of today when this video drops. So that means for Sacramento regionals, locals, and any other majors going on in the future, Surging Sparks is going to be legal. I'm going to be covering over the top 10 best decks, including deck lists, explanations, and more. All the deck lists are available in a pinned comment in the comment section, so be sure to check that out. And if there's any cards you need, check out our sponsors at Kayfabe Cards and PTCGO Store. That being said, give this video a like, share, subscribe, let us know what you think the top 10 best decks are in the comments, and let's jump into our number 10 pick. Kicking off our list this week is going to be a new entrant, and it's going to be Hydreigon EX. Now, Hydreigon EX is a card that has a lot of players divided, but I think I'm going to give it a shot at number 10 because I think the other deck that I have that would have been number 10, which is going to be Palkia Dusknoir, kind of falls off due to some of the Lightning decks, largely due to Pikachu EX entering into our metagame. We'll get on that a little bit more later. Hydreigon EX is really interesting because we take basically the core of any Charizard deck that's been successful, and instead of going for a cool ace spec that complements the deck, we go with Neo Upper Energy, which is necessary to get off attacks such as Obsidian. So we can attack as immediately with Crashing Headbutt, or we could use something like Obsidian. And I think in some games where you use Obsidian going 130, 130, 130 to the bench, you give yourself an opportunity to kind of go for a 1-2 punch. Especially with 330 HP, this Pokemon seems like it's staying kind of alive for a while. I could see some things such as binding Mochi in this deck to increase the damage output of Crashing Headbutt. However, in a lot of matchups such as Raging Bolt, I'm trying to use Obsidian against non-Tail Mask Pokemon because they are Terra type, giving it that kind of bench damage immunity. So as long as I'm able to kind of go 130, 130, 130, 130, 130, 130, that's pretty much enough for me to win the game in 2 attacks once I get Obsidian off. And as long as my Hydreigon EX is staying kind of alive during that time, I think it's quite a good opportunity. It's unsure for me if this deck's going to pop off at Sacramento or not, but I do think that it is worthwhile enough to include this week. If it doesn't do anything at Sacramento, guess who's not on the list next week? But that's what I'm saying. I think it's a lot of it has to go with like my personal opinion going into the metagame, and a lot of these decks are going to be my personal opinion since we had no major events in the Surging Sparks metagame. So it might be a little bit of an interesting list this week, but I do think that towards the top it's very correct, and then towards the bottom that's where there's that movement room. But right now we got Hydreigon entering at number 10. Did you guess Hydreigon being on your list? If you haven't put your best guesses in the comments, let us know. Otherwise, just be like, yo, I like the video. Anything like that really does help boost the YouTube algorithm. Let's jump into our number 9 pick. Another new entrant on this list this week is going to be Ceruledge EX, and I actually think that this one's going to be one of the ones that's going to stay along for a while. It's seen a lot of proven success in Japan. Definitely a little bit of a lower tier deck compared to some of these other decks. So I think it's going to relatively stay towards the lower half of our top 10, kind of for the duration of the Surging Sparks meta, or at least the early Surging Sparks meta. Being able to use Abyssal Flames, doing 30 plus 20 for each energy in your discard pile is peak Pokemon gameplay. It's kind of that fun wackiness where we're discarding a bunch of cards. We even have Brilliant Blender. A lot of games it's bad to discard cards. In this case, we're making it good in Pokemon to discard cards. Brilliant Blender ripping 5 of those energies, using Carmine, using Research, Squawkabilly. We have all these opportunities to discard energies and hit for some huge numbers with Abyssal Flames. I know a lot of people are really divided on should you include Palkia or not in this deck. I think having the opportunity to have a backup attacker, something that's a little bit more stable than Abyssal Flames, and additional typing, and of course allowing you to have the outlet of Radiant Greninja as a single prize card Pokemon sounds absolutely fantastic, because if Radiant Greninja takes off 2 prize cards, your opponent's forced to gust around the Radiant Greninja now. It's just tossing a lot of things at them after they just took a 2 prize card deficit. Ceruledge seems like it's going to be that deck that a lot of players that are going to enter the game with. It's relatively easy to play, relatively easy to win with, certainly has its own flaws, and I mean, this list does the best thing that it can to try to cover them up. No deck is perfect, Ceruledge is far from perfect, but this is really where I'd like to start off with the deck, so I hope everyone enjoys it. That being said, let's jump into our number 8 pick. Entering back into our list this week is going to be Miraidon EX. It's largely been absent for probably the past few months, And I don't think this deck's really done too much since after the World Championships, where Jesse Parker went on that absolute tear all the way to top 4. Right now, we're going to be featuring Sejun Park's list from South Korea. Absolutely a fantastic player from there. The same one that won the 2014 VG World Championships with Pachirisu. They also play TCG, have been kind of a Miraidon mainstay player, and went with this really interesting Pikachu EX deck with Miraidon EX in the late night series. You can see that there's the grass and the metal. So this is kind of the first take on Pikachu EX that I think that's really cool. And one of the reasons why decks like Palkia Dusknoir being weak to lightning might be a little bit lower on the rankings. In this case, Palkia Dusknoir is out of the top 10. We have Miraidon that's really kind of to blame, and there's a few other decks, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Using Pikachu Latias EX for the free retreat, a Sparkling Crystal plus an Electric Generator plus an Attach for turn is enough for Pikachu EX to attack, knocking something out for 300. With Gravity Mountain, we could do 330 basically, and then you could always use Magneton, powering back up the Pikachu, reloading it. If its Emerald Heart ability kind of stays in place, Pikachu can kind of get reloaded one more time, so you basically took 4 prize cards at the cost of 1 prize card, giving this deck some decent footing when it comes to it. It's also an Area 0 activator. I know that there's no Area 0 in this deck, but you could use Area 0 if your opponent had one in play. I think that a deck like this is really interesting. I'd want to see how this deck grows. Maybe we'll see more traditional Miraidon Area 0 decks. Maybe we won't, but until then, right, this is what we got going on. Absolutely a fantastic choice of a deck here. And remember, all the lists are available in the pinned comments in the comment section, so you can copy and paste those directly into PTCG Live. Walking in at number 7 is going to be Lugia V-Star, kind of a format mainstay that went from being a top 4 deck all the way down to being a bottom top 10 deck, or lower half top 10 deck. We're getting closer to the middle though, so not all hope is lost for Lugia. However, there is quite a few lightning decks in the metagame, Miraidon being one of them, and largely Pikachu EX being the core of some of these lightning type decks, or lightning type decks, has a lot to blame. It's a cool card that you can include in a lot of decks, whether you're activating Area 0, whether you're attacking with it, etc, etc. Of course, that's going to have a trickle on the existing metagame. So while Lugia didn't necessarily gain anything from this sets, and it's kind of the first deck that we have that it's the exact same as our previous Stellar Crown format, the surrounding metagame is going to shift its positioning from having a stranglehold on the metagame for months to now it doesn't necessarily have that same thing. It's a deck that exists. It's a solid choice as long as you don't run into any of the lightning type decks. So until those lightning type decks really kind of clear out of the metagame, Lugia V-Star is going to be stuck kind of at its placement at number 7, or kind of the lower bottom half of the top 10. And other decks like Palkia Dusknoir are going to be kind of just outside of the top 10. Maybe they could creep back in as a number 10 depending on what their positioning is. However, it's just one of those things. You either dodge the lightning and see success, or you can kind of die trying. So at number 7, that's Lugia. Again, you could get any of these cards that you want from our sponsor at Kayfabe Cards. They can ship directly to you. They vend at regionals. So be sure to check them out if you are going to Sacramento or any of the other Pokemon regionals that they might be vending at. Additionally, you can get these cards online by going to ptcgostore.com, picking up any codes, putting them into PTCG Live, and then getting some credits to craft these cards. Almost at our halfway point, so let's jump into number 6. At number 6, we have Gardevoir EX, Henry's Baltimore winning list for the most part. And what I've done is I made a cut, I believe it was Spiritomb, for a copy of Manaphy. Manaphy is really going to be helping out against some of these Radiant Greninja decks. So if we see, I think Lost Zone Box is on its kind of way up. Don't want to kind of ruin too much of the list. But there's also the Ceruledge deck that's also playing Radiant Greninja. So having some bench protection there can be quite helpful and beneficial. I mean, Regidrago is probably somewhere on this list, right? And that could also help out against Kyurem a little bit. Maybe Manaphy will decide to stay for a little bit, and Gardevoir is still going to be trying to rip some energies into the discard pile, draw cards with Kirlia, and then have all these powerful psychic Pokemon with Screamtail and Drifloon, and then moving damage counters with Monkey Dory. So these builds seem incredibly strong when it comes to playing these decks. Gardevoir is really not necessarily a deck for me. I think it just more or less exists in this format. You do got to watch out for any of those Miraidon decks that are running Iron Hands. There's a handful of other decks that might be running Iron Hands. Again, watch out for Radiant Greninja. So it's Gardevoir's kind of in the it's in the same spot as where Lugia is, in my opinion. These 6, 7, 8 spots are kind of the lower middle of the list, where they're not necessarily bad. They're definitely solid decks that have seen success, but they're not as well positioned right now as they originally once were, or they're kind of the same position. They're really more or less decks that kind of exist in this current format. But we're at the halfway point, so let's jump into number 5. If you haven't put your best guesses already, put your best guesses for the top 5 best decks. Give this video a like, double check to see if you subscribed, and even if you don't want to put your best guesses in the comments, anything helps. Just being like, yo, what's up, Zach, or anything else like that really does help the boost the YouTube algorithm. Let's jump into our number 5 pick. Looking at our number 5 pick, we have Terapagos EX, the deck that I brought to the Latin American International Championships. Another one of these decks that hasn't really changed. I already had Manaphy in my deck for kind of a soft counter to Gardevoir with Screamtail, soft counter to Regidrago. But in this case, we also can get the additional benefit of all those Radiant Greninja decks that I've been talking about. We'll get into that a little bit more in a minute, kind of blocking them there. We're trying to hit hard with Unified Beatdown, just double turbo, kind of aggressive 2 prize card deck, one of these big basics decks. We also have Dusknoir. If anything, I think Terapagos EX gets better placement in this metagame. I know it might have gone down a spot or two from my last list, but we have to like kind of adjust it. Like I said, this is kind of a transition week between Stellar Crown and into Surging Sparks. So some placements might not be correct. I really want to see how Sacramento goes. Being able to use Dusknoir against Pikachu's Emerald Heart ability is going to be quite powerful, so that you could actually break through and knock out that Pikachu in one attack. We also have all of the answers to kind of the big basics decks that are kind of coming up. Like we see Miraidon coming back. Maybe we'll see Raging Bullets on this list. This deck has quite great matchups into a lot of the decks in the top 10, which is why it's in the upper half of the top 10. I really think that division between 5 and 6 might not seem like a lot, but we're kind of getting into the real kind of juicy top 5 decks. So if you are going to somewhere like Sacramento, choosing any of the decks in the top 10 is completely fine. I mean, choosing any deck if you have the right reasoning for it, whether you're playing for fun, whether you think it's going to have a great matchup spread, like as long as you have a reason to play a deck, absolutely great idea. However, I think any of the decks in the top 5 are probably going to be a little bit weighted higher into the metagame, just having generally better matchups. So if you haven't got a chance to check those out, be sure to check it out. I mean, you're watching this video right now, right? Let's see what we've got going on at number 4. Looking at our number 4 deck, we have Lost Zone Box, and we have the new edition of Pikachu EX. So this is kind of the other lightning deck that I was kind of foreshadowing a little bit. Basically, Pikachu EX slots in here nicely because we're able to search out some of those energies with Mirage Gates. So just finding ways to power up these new Crown Terra Pokemon, giving ourselves some ways to power them up with all the different types. I think that this deck kind of works out great. I took Azul GG's list as a base. I slotted in Latias EX over Rescue Board, and I think I found a space for another Psychic Energy, so Latias EX could potentially attack. Rescue Board's great, but I think Free Retreat on all your Pokemon, including Iron Hands, being Nest Ballable, gives you a lot of opportunities to see success. Lost Zone Box now having an outlet to do 300 damage, giving yourself an opportunity to potentially knock out a Regidrago V-Star, maybe a Lugia V-Star. Then you can go into Iron Hands, knock out another Pokemon for extra prize cards. This deck really seems to have a lot of answers across the board, and I think that's something where Lost Zone Box really has success with. I think we've seen Lost Zone Box see success in almost every format it's been available in. Right off the hop, winning international championships, multiple international championships, and now it's back kind of going on its victory lap, where we still continue to get new cards to add into this deck. So we'll have to see how this list ends up performing. I think right now, I know a lot of top players, talked to, including my friend Hunter Butler, really huge fans of Lost Zone Box deck, and seeing how it's going to see success in kind of the top of the metagame. We're about to enter into our top 3. If you haven't put your guesses in the comments below, let me know what you think the top decks are. Beyond that, let's jump into our number 3 pick. At number 3, we have Raging Bolt, one of the kind of mainstays of our format, and we did add the slight buff of Koraidon into this deck. Now, I was unsure if I wanted to go with no Koraidon over Slitherwings, and basically Slitherwings is an out to knock out Pikachu. Koraidon should knock out Pikachu, but there's the kind of Emerald Heart ability we got to deal with. So Slitherwings does the knockout, Emerald Heart triggers, then Burn triggers. The Burn takes care of the Pikachu in between turns, giving yourself an opportunity to just knock that Pokemon out. I do think having more single prize card Pokemon in this deck can lead to some interesting situations. So I found a slot to add Koraidon into this deck. Whether that's going to end up being standard or not, we'll have to find out. But I do think that we'll see a mix of either Slitherwing and Koraidon, or both in Raging Bolt decks this weekend. And I think Raging Bolts doesn't really lose anything from this format. If anything, Lugia exiting out of the top kind of 5 decks or so is probably going to give it a little bit more footing when it comes to the metagame. So as we kind of approach this kind of situation, Raging Bolt just seems like it's in a better position overall slightly. So it's going to stay within the kind of top 4 decks. Nothing else beyond just using Bellowing Thunder, Accelerate Energies with Teal Mask and Professor Sada's, and keep on unleashing those energies. Let's see what we got going on at our number 2 pick. Speaking about mainstay decks, we have Charizard EX absolutely soaring high, probably the highest it has been in a hot minute. Really matching a lot of the Japanese metagame that's been playing in the Surging Sparks formats. Did not add anything new to this deck. I think the only thing that I've changed is I've added in Canceling Cologne, I believe over a Duskull, just to have an answer against some of the wall stall decks that might exist, having answers against Pikachu EX, and a handful of other things. Sure, you could always use Dusknoir, Dusclops to kind of pop into a Pikachu, but that's really just a 1 prize card for 2 prize cards motion. And if they can knock you back on the same way, you're forced into a really tough predicament. So I feel like Canceling Clone is going to be a solid addition to the deck right now. Terra Orb is really the other new one that you could add into this deck. Otherwise, this deck is pretty well looking like a solidified standard list. I think it's absolutely super well positioned because, again, we lose Lugia out of the top 4, which could always be a troublesome matchup for Charizard, just slightly. And then we gain all these big basic decks coming back in, like Miraidon. I'm sure we're going to see some Roaring Moon. I'm sure we're going to see some Gouging Fire, just by the addition of Latias EX, maybe Koraidon being added into those decks. So Charizard can really take advantage of all those solid matchups, boosting it up to number 2. Now, this is our top 2 of the week, right? What's going to be our number 1? If you haven't put your guess in the comment, put your guess. I'm sure a lot of y'all can already see what it is. If you watched the finals of the Latin American International Championships, maybe you saw that deck there. Otherwise, let's jump into it. At number 1, we have Regidrago V-Star. Now, Regidrago V-Star has long been the most successful deck since the tail end of the Twilight Masquerade formats, all throughout Shrouded Fable, all throughout Stellar Crown formats. And really, we just have to see exactly how it continuously sees success. So as we kind of go into this format, Regidrago, the only thing that I've cut is I cut Temple of Sinnoh because Lugia is kind of on its way out. There's not too many special energies in this format. I cut that for Hisuian Gudra, so you have some answers against some of the more fringe decks, such as Ceruledge EX. And everything else really just kind of remains the same. We'll have to see how the rest of the metagame kind of goes, but we're still going to be copying our Dragon-type Pokemon out of our discard pile with Apex Dragon. We're still going to be searching them out with Noctowl. I think, if anything, this deck is like any other deck on this list. It doesn't gain anything new. I did think about adding Alolan Executor EX, just guarantee a prize card or 2 prize cards, basically off of our attack. But otherwise, it's just, it's more or less the same. And I think that's one of the kind of true things about a lot of the top decks is no matter what the format throws at them, they just adapt and become a little bit better over time. So all these decks are available, are going to be in the pinned comment. You can always check out Kayfabe Cards if you need to get any of these cards in real life. PTC Geo Store if you want to get these cards online. And if you want to sleeve them up or put them in a deck box, check out ultimateguard.com and see what products they have to offer. Let me close things out. And that's what we got going on for this video today. We have Regidrago V-Star on top of the metagame. Yet another kind of strong run from Regidrago. What's really going to derail it? I honestly think we're going to see some decks like Miraidon, Gouging Fire, Turbo Roaring Moon, Raging Bolt, any of the big basic decks, and there could be endless other big basic decks that just kind of knock Regidrago out. That's typically, it's going to be its worst matchup. And we'll have to see how the rest of the metagame shapes up. I'm really excited. I think what I'm going to be starting after this event is going to be kind of a post-regionals meta update videos. I'm probably going to try to get those out on Tuesday, maybe Wednesday every week. So kind of expect more in-between meta updates from most major events. I hope everyone's been appreciating the content on the channel. There's a lot of really cool tabletop videos that I've been doing primarily with PJ. I am looking to just make more and more great content, so we'll have to see exactly how that goes, but I appreciate everyone tuning in. That being said, if you need any of the cards for these decks in this video, check out our sponsors at Kayfabe Cards. They're where I get all of my cards from, and they are absolutely great people, great selection of cards, and they vend at the official Pokemon TCG regionals. I believe they're also vending at Sacramento, so if you see them out there, tell them that the Shuffle Squad sent you out there, or Zach Lesage sent you out there. They'd know what's up. They'd probably hook you up really nice. And if you need any of the cards online, check out our sponsor at ptcgeostore.com. You could always get any of the credits that you need by inputting a bunch of codes, and we'll have to see how that goes. We also have Ultimate Guard. I use all their products. We got them on, I use their sleeves, their binders, their deck boxes. Absolutely a fantastic company as well. So check out the Ultimate Guard website. That being said, let us know what kind of content you want to see next. Till then, I will catch up with all y'all later. Peace out and have a great one. Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.